Hey y'all, welcome to the next episode of Two Girls Talk Transits. It's just me today. We definitely got impacted by that full moon with the full moon in Leo, and Kaleigh has been out with the flu for like a week and a half. So, you know, it's expected. Uranus was in her first house, and it definitely created disruption to her body health and how she's able to move forward. So today is just me for this week. We're covering February 16th through February 22nd, 2025. Luckily, there is not a lot going on this week. This is actually a very, very quiet week, which is good because it gives us time to process that very disrupting full moon in Leo and also start to integrate into some of the new cycles that we're starting. But we're going to break down a couple of the aspects this week, and we're also going to look at some of the moon transits to kind of give you a deeper understanding of how this week is flowing. But knowing that this is a good week to take some time off and kind of pause with yourself and relax a bit. Now, on Sunday, February 16th, that may be a teeny bit harder. We have the moon here starting in Libra, and the aspect over the main aspect for the 16th is that she's squaring Mars, and then we'll also be coming opposite Chiron here on that same day, closer into the evening. But she starts that square to Mars around 5 p.m., but you'll be feeling it all day on Saturday. And then you'll also be feeling a little bit of that. Hey, that did not work out well. A little bit of that opposition to Chiron as well. So this is important because we are looking at Mars stationing direct at the very end of this week. So it's something we're going to talk about at the next podcast, the next episode. Mars has been retrograde, as you know, since December, and it's been specifically retrograde in Cancer since early January. January 4th or 6th is when it first entered there. So we've had a really long period of time with Mars in Cancer. And on top of that, we're also looking at a sort of slow moving Mars. Mars is sort of fallen in Cancer, which means a lot of our actions have been diverted to things that we don't necessarily pay attention to. You may have felt like wherever Mars rules in your chart, like in this chart, it's ruling the ninth and the fourth. This person generally likes to take action with their long-term plans, higher education, learning new things, or with their home and their family. But instead, their action has been diverted to dealing with hidden battles and frustrations. It's different for everyone, but there's been this tendency to having to put aside what you would want to do, how you usually like to expend your energy, instead into this other goal and this other sort of realm in your life that's not comfortable and not satisfying. And that's something that is kind of coming to a peak this week because Mars will station direct right at 17 degrees. It's literally not going any farther. It's moving so slow this week. And that can really translate to a lot of our actions and stuff also being so slow and slow, tedious, and frustrating and having difficulty. So that's something to think about as you start off this week on Sunday, because the moon making that aspect to Saturn or to Mars is really kind of confronting the actions that you have not been able to take, the things that you want to be doing that you have not been able to do, the things that you would rather be putting your time into that you have not been able to do, or the actions that you have been diverting your energy to that maybe aren't even progressing as quickly as you thought they would be. And so is this feeling of high intention. The moon in Libra really wants ease, and she really wants flow and enjoyment for this weekend. And instead, she's coming up this pain point of why aren't things moving fast enough? And on top of that, when she gets that opposition with Chiron a little bit later, she's looking at a much more frustrating womb that comes up. And that's going to be difficult and a little bit annoying. And it's sort of a pain point to start the week, but it's not an end all be all because this is not the full picture. We are just kind of getting a taste of it. I do think this is something we'll feel next weekend when Mars does finally go direct, but the moon in Libra will definitely be feeling or addressing some wounds and pay points and things that are a little more difficult at first. So that's something to kind of think about when we start off this week. And it may too involve perhaps that full moon, if that full moon disrupted anything, kind of embracing the frustrations and the wounds and the changes that are being brought up. But then we're going to change gears a little bit. And on Tuesday, the 18th, we're going to have now the sun entering into Pisces with Mercury. I can't quite get my drawings where I want them to be on the video, but it's okay. I should have played around with this more beforehand. We are fully in Pisces season now, and we're looking at a little pileup. A stellium is what we call it in astrology. Generally, I like stelliums when there are 3 or more planets, usually 4. It's a nice size stellium for me. We're looking at the sun in Pisces at 0 degrees, Mercury in Pisces at 8 degrees, Saturn in Pisces at 19, the North Node here at 27, and Neptune here at 28. So there's quite a lot of Pisces energy. We're behind Aquarius season. We are now in the mutable, shifting sign, water sign that is prepping us for the rebirth, the spring, the turn of the wheel. So I do feel that this energy is definitely emotional, but there is a feeling of responsibility and emotional responsibility with Saturn here. There is a heaviness to Pisces season with Saturn here because Saturn reminds us of all our constraints, of all our limitations, of all our ways that we've been pushed back against or knocked down, or the long-term work and steadfast effort that we have to put our mind and our time into. There is something that is a feeling of slowness with Pisces season with Saturn here. There is an element of having to move through your feelings with more gravity, with more importance. And I really think we got a taste of this last week on Valentine's Day when Mercury entered Pisces, but now the sun here, our awareness is really heightened on our feelings. Collectively, we're going to experience a lot of emotional reactions. And unfortunately or fortunately, it depends on what happens from this, but probably a lot of systematic changes based on emotional reactions. That's very Saturn and Pisces. Saturn and Pisces feels like he has this responsibility to heal or to make collective change that's often based on emotional responses or the collective emotional feelings about things. And there is this sort of gravity and seriousness to, do you feel okay about this? So that's a big piece of it. And then the North Node here is only going to intensify that. It's only going to make this feel like it's so important. So I do invite you to really pay attention to your emotions, especially on Tuesday, on into Wednesday, because on Tuesday as well, the moon is going to be entering into Scorpio. And there's so much happening around how you feel and dealing with uncomfortable emotions, especially with the moon in Scorpio having this heightened feeling of seriousness and wanting to get to the heart of the matter. And then something has to change with Saturn being here. And I do think collectively, at least in America, the full moon brought up a lot of disruptions. I don't think I have Trump's chart saved on the computer here anymore, but I did. But his full moon, the full moon was very close to his Mars, and I think we all saw the sort of image of Elon Musk standing in the Oval Office in front of Trump, kind of giving this long speech and Trump just sitting there sort of dejected or not really emotionalist, I guess is a better way to phrase it. Just letting Elon kind of steal his glory. And there was this disruption to who is really the public image or the public figure in United States right now. And that's a very full moon disruption. And then the shift into Pisces season is going to really pay more attention to like the emotional response of that and what changes come from these emotional reactions, whether good or bad, whether we are fighting for what's right or we are fighting because we have these intense feelings about things. I don't know. There's definitely a sort of a repeat of the full moon, especially on Wednesday, the 19th, because the moon is going to now be opposite Uranus. Here in this chart, you can see moon is at 22 degrees of Scorpio and it's opposite Uranus and Taurus at 23. So it's triggering that fixed sign kind of square and now in opposition to Uranus, where it's disrupting, it's change, it's frustrating, it's chaotic, it's, retouching on the feelings, very much so the feelings with the moon being in Scorpio of what the full moon brought up. So here on Wednesday, February 19th, we can definitely expect a sort of reflection back to the full moon that happened on the 12th of last week, and maybe sort of the emotional response or the what's starting to unfold now, the changes, the feelings. We're looking at a lot of planets and water signs, and a lot of them are malefics, and this can definitely translate to being blinded by your feelings or being blinded by what you emotionally feel is right. And when the moon hits opposite Uranus, there can be nothing stopping you from making that sudden change or shift. So for you personally, you really want to look to your fixed signs. You want to look to Leo and Aquarius because that's where the full moon was. And then you want to pay attention this week to Taurus and Scorpio, as that's where some emotional changes or kind of a repeat or a review or a continuation of those changes starts to manifest. We know when the moon hits these planets, especially when it hits Uranus today, we can actually see change or disruption start to manifest or come apparent into your life. And it can bring some intense emotional feelings about that with all these malefics and now all these planets in Pisces. So something to think about for sure. This sort of feeling and emotional depth will continue into Thursday, where we're going to have Mercury and Pisces now squaring Jupiter and Gemini. And Jupiter has recently stationed direct in early February. It was February 4th. And it hasn't really moved though. It's stationed direct at like 11 degrees of Gemini and it's not really progressed forward. So there hasn't been a lot of forward momentum this month as you may be wanting to have happen. But today, maybe something does break through, something does change. While this is a square aspect, it's generally a positive one just because Mercury ruling Jupiter and Jupiter ruling Mercury is a term that we would call mutual reception in astrology, where they're not necessarily in places they want to be, but they're in each other's ruled signs, so they're able to share resources with each other. And when this happens, it creates a lot of flowing energy that can lead to problem solving and feeling abundant or feeling like, okay, this is the direction I'm going to move forward now. And I do think Mercury here is supporting Jupiter's progression or just its recent station direct in a way that Jupiter's like, I can now progress forward. I now can move forward. I have an understanding of what I need to expand on, what details I need to pay attention to, what's being asked of me. And these are the ideas that I have on how to move forward, how to push forward, and what changes can be made, or knowing that these changes have been made from the full moon. Here's my new ideas. Here's what I'm going to do next. So, I think this is our nice positive aspect. Thursday is also Jupiter's day, and the moon is entered into Sagittarius as well. So, this is a really powerful Jupiter experience. So, it's a good day for at least having more faith in yourself as well. As we are in Pisces season, that's a big Pisces theme. What do you believe in? What do you have faith in? How do you trust? What do you trust in? Maybe having more trust in yourself, maybe trusting some of the information that you're getting now with Mercury squaring Jupiter, maybe having to filter out that information just a bit, but also having some trust and just faith in this process a little bit more, or realizing, hey, I can't control this all. And this brought up a lot of intense emotional feelings, but this is where I'm going to put my efforts and time to. This is what I can control. And I just have to trust that everything else is going to fall into place. I think it's more positive. I do think it's not going to save everything, but it's going to start to push forward some energy. And we've been having all these retrogrades, so that I think this forward energy is going to feel really empowering in some way. And that's necessary to get us to move forward. We have more retrogrades coming up, but this will help us feel like we're in a little bit more control. So, at least on Thursday, definitely look at things that you do have direct control of. It's good for problem solving, for planning, for expanding the mind, learning new information, but also taking action on new information. And, if you can't directly understand it, let it go. That's a good motto for Pisces season, honestly. To wrap up this kind of quick podcast, though, the last real aspect that we have for this week is not even quite there, is on the 21st of Friday. I think it's going to be a little bit later in Friday. We progress this chart forward. But we're going to be looking at the moon still in Sagittarius, and she'll be squaring both Mercury and Saturn here. So it is a bit of, again, having to confront some limitations or responsibilities. Maybe you got these big ideas from Thursday, or an idea really sparked in your mind about how you can change, how you can move forward, what you can control in your life. And then on Friday, you again are reminded of a responsibility or a limitation or an obligation, the Saturnian piece, right? Hey, I know you feel all this excitement, but is that really what you could be putting your time and effort into? It is a bit of a downer feeling. It's happening Friday night too. So it can definitely be sort of a depressing energy sometimes when the moon is squaring Saturn and then Mercury is so close to Saturn. There is this lower energetic feeling with Saturn at this place, because you just are reminded again of the boundaries of what you're up against. This great big entity that you're up against, this great big responsibilities that you have to maintain or continue to deal with. So, not a happy note to end on at all. But we are kind of something we just have to embrace in Pisces season, honestly. Like, you need to get comfortable with Saturn and Pisces here. And one good thing to reflect on is that Saturn's been in Pisces for since trying to remember. I think it didn't tell me on here. March of 2023. It's been about 2 years. We're coming up on 2 years of Saturn in Pisces. And this is where you've really been restructuring that area of your life. If you know your chart, wherever Pisces sits in your chart, has been going through a lot of clearing away, perhaps slowness, but an intentional restructuring, at least if you've been intentional about it. And there's been ups and downs with that growth, but sort of feeling like you were really starting to come onto the turning point of that area of your chart where the slowness or the feeling of like nothing has been happening here is now you're understanding one why, or if you've been really putting long-term sustained effort in there, you may starting to see the changes grow through over Pisces season. So that's a positive reflection, or maybe an activity to do on Friday night is to spend some time thinking about what structural changes you've been making in that area of your life. And if you don't know what area that is, think about your emotional empathy and your emotional changes. What is it like for you to process difficult feelings now? Does that look different than when it was 2 years ago? Are you processing more openly? Are you sharing more? Or are you more closed off because you were too open? Are you protecting your feelings more now in a way that's helpful for you? Are you embracing sort of the limitations you have emotionally and learning what better ways to support yourself, maybe through therapy or medications or anything else that's had to change? Or, are you able to confront more feelings of loss and death with more openness? There's all those things Saturn and Pisces has been working through the past 2 years. So that's sort of the note we're ending on for this week. There isn't a whole lot happening into Saturday, and we will end on a cliffhanger because we will have Mars finally start to station direct next week, and we have a lot more aspects, but a lot of feelings for sure coming up with that. So, embrace the watery side of life for this week is my best advice for you. And, allow yourself to go slow with your emotions and maybe just be more aware of what actions you want to take based on your feelings, and just check in with yourself that that's actually something you should be doing. And maybe if not, maybe give yourself a chance to step back and just feel everything before you actually have to do anything about it. So that's all I have for you this week. Is a softer week. It is a lot about Pisces season and embracing that change. So we will both be back for next week, but in the meantime, check out our content on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube for the video version of this podcast at Two Girls Talk Transits. And we'll see you next week. Have a great week, y'all.